Non-Techies podcast. I'm your host, tech entrepreneur, executive coach, and Chicago Booth MBA, Sophia Matveeva. My aim here is to help you have a great career in the digital age. In a time when even your coffee shop has an app, you simply have to speak tech. On this podcast, I share core technology concepts, help you relate them to business outcomes, and most importantly, share practical advice on what you can do to become a digital leader today. If you want to have a great career in the digital age, this podcast is for you. Hello, smart people. How are you today? I'm excited to teach you today's lesson because it is based on a super useful, amazing book. Today's lesson is based on the Design Bible, and it's called The Design of Everyday Things by Don Norman. This is the book that the leading user experience designers and just designers in general all reference. So basically, it's one that you need to know about, and I have linked it in the show notes too. You're going to hear an excerpt of a class that I taught on Don Norman's book and the concept that he teaches in this book, and the entire class is available on demand within Tech for Non-Techies. And if you have just discovered this podcast and you're thinking, okay, this show is called Tech for Non-Techies, why are you talking to me about design? I don't need a new logo. Well, my dear, listen. Design for technology is a discipline. The reason why many of today's tech companies are successful is because of good design. And design is not just about making fun apps, although of course it's really important for that. Design is an important theme in the boardroom. In the Logitech case study that I taught to you a couple of episodes ago, if you haven't listened, you really should. It's really interesting. I gave you the example of Bracken Darrell. So Bracken Darrell, he was the CEO of Logitech. He was a corporate CEO. So literally, he started his career as an accountant at Arthur Andersen. And then he's got his MBA at Harvard. So Bracken used design thinking, this corporate guy used design thinking to increase shareholder returns by 10 times at Logitech. So his board, his shareholders were super happy that he discovered design thinking. And he gave an interview on a podcast called Storied Future. And he said, the next great CEOs will be designers. Whether they're officially trained in it or not, they will think that way because design is an iterative process aimed at imagining a future state and delivering it through new technologies and existing technologies. This is why, my dear smart person, if you want to either be a very successful CEO yourself, or if you want to work for very successful CEOs, which you do, because why would you want to work for loser CEOs? I don't know. Anyway, so you'd better figure out what this design thing is, and this is why I have lovingly made this episode for you. And you know what? To learn these concepts properly and apply them to your goals, you need to do more than listen to a podcast. I mean, we're doing a lot here, and I do honestly think that this is useful, but a podcast is a podcast. To get really meaningful results, you should join me in the Design 2024 to Be Your Best Year Yet workshop on the 28th of January. It is going to be a small group format, so it's not going to be a webinar. It is a workshop for a small, limited number of people. And if you're listening to this in December 2023, there's good news because we still have early bird seats left. So I suggest you get your place now and then be safe in the knowledge that you can just take December off, enjoy yourself, and in January you're going to do something really, really good for yourself. In the workshop, you will learn design thinking methodologies, and you'll also hear from a lead designer about how she works with her design team and how she works with the CEO. And this means that you'll learn the theory of design thinking, and you'll also see how it gets applied in practice within a business, both to make products and to run the company at a strategic level. As I said, the group size is going to be small enough so you can ask questions and really get this material to sink in. And in the second half of the workshop, we will do exercises to help you apply what you've learned. So to help you apply design thinking methods to create an ambitious but realistic plan for 2024. And this is the methodology that Bracken Darrell used at Logitech to grow shareholder returns 10 times. So, if you want remarkable results that people write about in books and discuss in podcasts like this one, come to this workshop and learn how to use design thinking. This is going to be a truly remarkable event. I'm really excited about it, and it is specifically for smart high achievers. So if you see yourself in the smart high achiever category, then get your seat while the early bird rate is still available. The link is in the show notes, or just go to techfornontechies.co/events and you'll see the link there. And if this workshop sounds interesting to you and you work at a corporate, I want you to know that this workshop works really well in a corporate setting too, because it makes teams more innovative. And every single board, every single boss wants their team to be more innovative. So get in touch if you want to explore this workshop option for your work. I'd love to hear from you. And now let's get back to this episode. In today's lesson, you're going to learn how to use the 5 why process to understand what the problem that you're trying to solve really is. You're going to learn why human error doesn't really exist. And there's a pretty scary example to demonstrate this point. So basically, if you're in a plane, do not listen to this. And you're also going to learn why marketing and product development can be warring factions in a company and how to avoid that. So what's this book about? So literally, if you have to go or your internet connection breaks or you fall asleep, just remember this slide, literally this slide, and you'll be fine. So the main premise of the book by Don Norman, he says that products are made for humans. And this might sound really obvious, but once you start working with product creators or you're working in a company, all the different priorities tend to forget that the reason we're making this is for humans. The point of a product is not to amuse the engineers and to show off their amazing capacities. It is also the point of a product is also not to make a profit, right? Like the marketers, and that's something we'll cover, the marketers and the product managers are going to be thinking about profit. Well, the product managers will be thinking more about revenue, but anyway, you know what I mean. The business people are going to be thinking about profit. But actually, that whether product makes a profit is a function of so many things. So, for example, if you have a great product but very expensive marketing, you're not going to be making a big profit. So, again, you need to take out all of that other stuff, all of those competing demands. So another demand could be, okay, our competitors have these features, we must have them too. Okay, is that a focus on humans? Well, it's focus on humans in a way that it's focusing in your competitors, but it's not focusing on the problems that your product needs to solve. In order to work out what the problem is, Don Norman and also a bunch of other smart people in design, they look for the 5 whys. Okay, the 5 whys essentially originally came from Toyota in the 70s when they kind of revolutionized how you make products and how the entire manufacturing team participates in making sure that there are no errors. But also before that, they were looking at the 5 why process, which is basically, if you're looking to establish a human need, you need to go further. So for example, if I am looking for this Uber competitor, then why am I looking for an Uber competitor? Then maybe my answer is, I don't like Uber because I don't like their company culture and I don't want to give them any of my money if I possibly can. Okay, if that is my why, if that's my second why, then my other whys are going to be kind of different. So they're going to be because I don't like their corporate culture because of all the sexual harassment that they've had. And also I don't like their corporate culture because of the way they don't pay their drivers properly. Okay, so what are my values? So do you see what I mean? It takes somebody down one set of values. Another set of whys could be, well, why are you looking for an Uber competitor? I'm looking for an Uber competitor because Uber just doesn't really work very well around my postcode, and I always end up waiting for 15 minutes to get a taxi. The solution to that problem is going to be entirely different from the problem that I've just outlined. So remember that when you're creating a solution, you're always thinking about why is that person looking for something? What do they actually need?
Another thing that Don Norman goes into quite some detail about is that human error usually doesn't exist. Sometimes it does, but very, very rarely. Most of the time, when in the papers we see that somebody says, oh, this accident was the result of human error, most of the time it's because of a design error. So the examples that he gives in the book are pretty horrific. So don't read this book if you're on a plane, by the way, because essentially it's the examples that are the brightest, that are most memorable, that are the most scary, right? He gives several examples of plane crashes where the system was designed in such an overwhelming way, or the system was designed so badly that if you put a person into that system, no matter how smart or how trained they are, they're basically set up to fail. And then when that person fails, because the system set them up to fail, what do? People blame human error. I mean, we've all been in situations where essentially we've been put into a situation when we can't win. So if you're put into a situation that you can't win, and then you're blamed that you didn't win, that's not really fair. So an example, just this, this is an example from one of the plane crashes. There are lots and lots of different valves in airplane controls. And when the valves have a problem, then they will make noises and sounds to alert you that your oil is low, your fuel is low, your oxygen is high, or all of these different metrics. And each one of these metrics at some point would have had its own little light and its own little siren. So imagine when a plane gets into trouble, a lot of the time it's not just going to be one thing that's wrong, but it will be different things. So that's already a scary situation. So if you're this pilot and you're in a cockpit and you've got 5 different sirens going off at you with 5 different rotating lights, and you're already in a very stressful situation, what is that going to do to you? Are you going to be in the best frame of mind to make a decision to save the airplane? No, you're not. So actually what Don Norman says is that a lot of the time the pilots would literally first try to disable the emergency ringing system in order so they could concentrate and actually save the plane. And since there is a time in which they can save the plane, sometimes they run out of time and they can't do it. And this is very much a design flaw. And you can see how in this situation, then when there is a post-mortem, nobody is thinking, well, was this poor person distracted from a very difficult task by 5 sirens that we put in there? No, that was design. So essentially what Don Norman is saying is that design for humans, and the example that I've just given you, it's very much about designing for humans, okay? So because you're thinking about human psychology, you're thinking, okay, when the pilot sees just one of those little flashing lights, they're already going to be stressed. So what we need to do is not give them any more stress, but alert them of the situation and try to create a situation in which they can deal with the emergency as calmly as they can and begin dealing with the emergency rather than switching off the annoying things. So what's design thinking? This is a quote from him. One of my rules in consulting is simple. Never solve the problem I'm asked to solve. Invariably, the problem I'm asked to solve is not the real fundamental root problem. Okay, so this is the 5 whys that we talked about. This is where I think a lot of the organizations tend to go wrong, a lot of the large organizations, or a lot of the founders that literally just come out of corporate and are starting their first startup, which was kind of like me. We tend not to know this, and so we don't necessarily do this kind of five whys, and we don't solve the right problem. Okay, we're running out of time, so I just want to skip through this because we already spent quite a lot of it. I think this bit is important. Okay, so this is in the business section again of the book. Marketing and design are both part of product innovation. So in order to make a good product, you need to have designers in there and you need to have marketing people in there. You need a collaboration of both. Because essentially, if designers make a product and nobody buys it, doesn't matter how amazing the design is, nobody buys it, it's going to be a flop. So design asks, what do people need? Remember, that's design thinking. What is the need? Human-centered design, design thinking, these are the terms that you're learning right now. Marketing asks, what do people buy? So we need to have both of them, but just remember that if you're a marketer and then you've decided to leave, I don't know, P&G or wherever you're doing marketing and start a startup, just remember that when you're hiring designers, they are going to be slightly at odds with you because what people need and what people buy are going to be different things. Often people buy things that they don't need and maybe then regret it afterwards. And often people don't need the things that they buy. Okay, so it's just a different focus. If you create something that people need, and then your marketing is fantastic and your prices meet that particular capacity of the person to buy, that's when it's perfect. But just don't make the mistake of thinking like a marketer right from the beginning. Think like a designer and then think like a marketer.
Well, obviously, I'm not even remotely impartial, but I thought that this was really interesting. I love Don Norman's work, both from a product design and a business design point of view. I've linked his book in the show notes, as I said, and I really do think that it's a great read. And also, what I like about it is that it is totally accessible to people outside the design and digital worlds. If you understood everything in today's episode, you are going to be totally fine with this book. It has lots of interesting case studies that you can relate to as well, so it's not a dry business book at all. And, my dear smart person, have you got your early bird ticket to our Design 2024 to be your best year yet workshop? Have you? It is the perfect way for you to learn design thinking and also to create a plan for your career or your venture. People have used this workshop for new product development, for market entry, and for career change. So if you want to achieve any of these things next year, join us in Design 2024 to be your best year yet. The link is in the show notes, or just go to techfornontechies.co/events. And on that note, my dear smart listener, I want to thank you for being with me today and for listening. I really do appreciate the time and the attention that you give to the show and that you give to me. I really love it, and I love the relationship that we're building together, and I'm super grateful for your attention. Okay, now have a wonderful day. Enjoy yourself because life is for living. And I shall be back in your delightful smart ears next week. Ciao!